We have an honored guest here today. I'm just going to give a brief introduction because there are copious notes in the program, but you'll recognize the name, even though they have it wrong in the program as NMMA. It's NMMA. Frank Hugelmeyer is a president and CEO of the National Marine Manufacturers Association, the leading trade group for recreational boating and the largest producer of boat shows in North America. He's the board chair and founding member of the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, the Washington, D.C. based coalition of America's leading outdoor recreation trade associations, and vice chair of the International Council of Marine Industry Association. He's here to give us an industry update. Welcome, and we're honored, Frank Hugelmeyer.
Testing. Can you guys hear me? We're good? Oh, there we are. And I'll need a little clicker. Well, first off, I want to thank the IYBA board and the members, the opportunity to meet with you and have this invitation. I really appreciate. I work very closely with Paul. We're good friends, and we greatly appreciate, on behalf of all of the NMMA members and the staff, the partnership that we have with IYBA with the Miami show. So thank you for having me. I'm going to take you through a little bit about NMMA for those who may not know about the association. Then go into some market data that we're having, the latest market data, and then I'm going to touch on some regulatory issues that I think everybody in this room should have on their radar, and then end at the end here with just some thoughts about the future of the market. But first, a little bit about myself. I'm a lifetime boater. I grew up in a boating family on Long Island. My entire family, my grandmother, my father, my uncles, the entire family had boats. We'd go over had the boats out in Blue Point. It was an absolute armada that we would take over to Fire Island every summer, and we'd literally live on the beach over the entire summer while my father would commute on the ferry. So boating is in my blood. It's why I jumped at a chance to follow Tom Damerick when he was retiring, and he was a good longtime friend and collaborator. Before that, I was at the RV Industry Association. Before that, I was at the Outdoor Industry Association. Before that, I ran companies like you do in the outdoor industry. I ran a company called Low Alpine, which was a backpack and mountaineering brand. And that's a whole nother story, just the mountaineering side of my background. NMMA, if you're not aware, we're focused really on four main buckets. The first is our advocacy, protecting the industry and growing the industry through advocacy and government affairs. We're also focused on certification standards within the industry, as well as the business intelligence and market research. And then we're very focused, obviously, on expanding the market, both through our boat shows, from Miami to New York to Boston to Atlantic City, Chicago, on, to the Discover Boating campaign, and how we're looking at bringing in the next generation of consumers, and particularly a much more diverse consumer. Our focus, though, right now, and I want to talk strategically, is to get proactive in our advocacy. The industry as a whole, historically, has been very defensive. Something happens to it, we're not anticipating it, it comes and hits us, and all of a sudden we're in defense. NMMA is making big investments right now. With my hire, I was hired to be based in Washington, D.C. Our corporate office was moved from Chicago to Washington, D.C. Our Canadian office was moved from Toronto to Ottawa. We're very focused on being a dominant, proactive advocacy organization on behalf of the industry, because we see going forward that unprecedented impacts when it comes to the regulatory environment that's going to threaten the industry, and we're going to be at the forefront of defending the industry on that front. One thing that I want to highlight, everyone in this room is part of a massive, massive economic engine in America. The outdoor recreation economy is a $1.1 trillion economic engine. And one of the top drivers of that economic engine is recreational boating and fishing. We're number 2 in this. This is driving 2.2% of the US GDP. That's massive. We're bigger than oil and gas. We're bigger than agriculture, outdoor recreation aggregate. And when you look at the role that we played during COVID, it was extraordinary because we invited people into the lifestyle. They were able to get and stay healthy, both from a health and wellness. And I know that was a challenging time during the charter side, but we saw a massive expansion in the industry and 1 million new first-time boat owners, which are going to go up the ladder. So we played a really important role, both from a health and wellness standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint. And I think it's really important for us to know that we're one of these critical leaders. And to just give you a little bit of background, the US government did not measure outdoor recreation as an economic sector 10 years ago. It was a collaboration with NMMA and myself when I was at the RV industry, outdoor industry, a coalition now of 48 different trade groups across the entire outdoor recreation ecosystem that advocated for us to actually get measured. Because what would happen is we would go in to government officials, whether it was at the federal or the state level, and they'd go, well, you're a nice to have. You're not a real business. Well, I think everybody in this room, one, first looks at themselves as a business, and we all make quite good livings. And it's important for them to realize we're a major economic job sector. And when you look at the $230 billion across the entire recreational boating industry, each and every year that we drive economically in the US, and the 800,000 jobs, you've got right now in Florida where we are, we're in the number 1 sector, number 1 region for the entire sector in the country. These are the top sectors in the states. This is a tough map to see right now, but you can see up number 2 obviously is California, just by its sheer size of that economy, being the 5th largest economy in the world, just standalone, never mind being part of the US. 3 in Texas, but New York and North Carolina, as well as Georgia. The East Coast is a major economic engine for our industry, as well as Michigan, where there's a lot of boat building and boating. Wisconsin, again, a lot of manufacturer jobs within our sector are up in that area. Same thing in Indiana and Illinois. You can find all of this information on a website in the Bureau of Economic Analysis. That's under the Department of Commerce. But to have the US government actually identifying our size as a sector is really important, because it allows us to then go back, you as business leaders in your local communities and the associations and the boards at a national level, to really advocate for what we want proactively. Because everyone in a $1.1 trillion economic ecosystem should have a business growth agenda from the country. And I can tell you right now, the other industry sectors that are in the top 15 are meeting with the White House, are meeting with the Vice President, are meeting with the heads of Senate and the House. And they understand what they want in terms of growing their business sector. That's what we're working on right now collectively in Washington, D.C. NMMA is at the head of that, and I actually chair a group called the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable. That entire mission is about making sure that our economic clout is recognized and that we're building that business growth agenda for all of the different segments, obviously recreational boating being the most important to NMMA. One of the other things that we look at is key economic indicators and where they are. And you can see right now, we're in a pretty significant cautionary period in almost every one of the economic indicators that we look at, with interest rates being in a trouble. And historically, it's not necessarily a trouble category being at 7%, you know, for those of us who have been around for a while, I remember 14% interest rates and things like that when I was buying my first home. But this has had a big governor because we were at such a low interest rate level in the country. And when you compound that with something that's not up here, which is inflation, it's had a huge impact on the industry in the last 2 years. So when you look at the sales of the boating market, and right here, this is the projections for this year, you can see that we've finished our COVID top. We're starting to downturn. We had around 940 boat sales in 2023 in the used, and then 259 in new. And that's declining even more. We know in different sectors right now, we're hearing as much as folks being down 20, even 30% in different categories, depending on that product category. New powerboat unit sales right now, and this actually is not correct the way it's showing up here. I don't know why it's reformatting, unfortunately, on the screen. This is further declining in 2024 and what we're projecting. That sales component, though, is important to realize that we're still above the 15-year average. So when you look at sales overall, we're still above where if you took the median across all those years, where sales have been. So we're better than where we were in 2008 to 2014. We're probably closer to right around where 2014 was within the industry. And most people are feeling like we're at the bottom. As soon as you start to see a little bit of a governor on the interest rates, you're going to start to see the market open up. And we're hopeful that we're going to see that at the beginning of this year. And I know for most of the boat builders are expecting to see that begin to take off. And a lot of economists would agree with that projection, and I've seen a lot of those presentations. One other thing I want to go back just to here before, because you can see the decline in the used market and in the boating market itself, the new boat market. Interest rates right now, we're struggling with the interest rates because the cost of carrying that inventory of where it was before the pandemic to where it is now is 30% higher. You also, the entry-level boats that were maybe $35,000 before the pandemic, after the inflation that has just occurred, is costing more around $80,000. That cost of labor is not going down. That cost of the inputs right now is not going down. And this is why what we've seen in this period is a massive increase actually in the PWC market, the personal watercraft market, because it's now becoming our entry-level product for people who want to get on the water. And people always want to get on the water. We sell experiences. That's never going to go away. But we're in a unique and very different dynamic right now where we have dealers who they have now cost inventory is 30% more than it was before the pandemic, and they're not increasing that credit limit. So you don't have as much boat inventory out into the market, which means you don't have as much manufacturing, and it continues to cycle. The one highlight in this whole period has been, whoops, I lost you. The one highlight in this whole period has been the upper end of the market. The upper end of the market is held strong because largely that buyer doesn't need to worry about the interest rate from their perspective. They're going to go into the market and they're going to get their boat. Let's talk about the regulatory environment. And for those who in the room are familiar with the vessel speed rule, all right, you've heard it. And I want to thank the yacht brokers for your support in terms of trying to get people who are getting ticketed for this issue to us, because we were able to connect them with legal defense groups who actually are using some of them right now to challenge the rule. And I could probably spend a half hour just on this issue alone. It's incredibly complex. But to give you a little bit of history and background. First, this issue came up in 2008. In October 2008, the first rule came out. What was happening in 2008 in October? It was the economic crash. And everyone was just sitting there wondering, how are they going to survive? It was just pushed out kind of quietly at a crisis moment of our country and wasn't challenged. The existing rule that exists today, which is right down in that northern part and those little kind of port bubbles that you can see in the picture, are the main port areas in the existing rule for 65 foot and over. Obviously, NMMA didn't see this at that time because just like everyone else, we were trying to survive in that window. So no one knew it existed for all this time. And then in right around 2020, environmental groups started to sue NOAA. And they sued them saying, you have to enforce this. And once that suit was lost in the federal, in court, they actually settled the lawsuit and said, all right, we'll look at implementing and doing something about this. They started to use AIS to ticket. And so in 2021, we started to see the beginnings of the ticketing that's been going on. 2022, obviously the ticketing has started to go on, and it's been going on since then. And that's really when we learned that this actually existed. And they then dropped in 2022 this new expanded rule that goes all the way from northern Florida all the way up to Maine, which means any boat over 35 feet for as much as 7 months out of the year, as far as 90 miles offshore, can only go 10 knots, the speed of a bicycle. All right? This is absurd. It's a massive government overreach. We will not allow this to become law. We will fight it with every resource that we have. NMMA has already built a very strong legal defense fund. I know that the Maine lobstermen who had a similar fight on this same issue spent about $10 million defending the rule, and we're prepared to do that at NMMA on behalf of the industry. But realize that this is not going away. We are going to see this issue metastasize over and over again. And the reason why is that initial first rule and the subsequent behaviors that have occurred. There is a massive environmental funded, it's a large foundation funded environmental campaign to actually restrict boating and that 10 knot, implement that 10 knot speed limit all along the Atlantic. You're seeing it here. They've already tried to do it in the Gulf. They're already sending flyers that they're going to be starting, trial balloons that they're going to do it in the Pacific as well as in the Pacific Northwest. It starts with them identifying critical habitat. And you've already heard that in some whales in the Gulf, they have established that critical habitat. And then comes the lawsuits from the environmental community. And if the boating community is not standing up and defending itself, what happens is just like in 2008, it just sails through. Regardless, the election, there's a couple of things that are going to impact this. First off, the Supreme Court rulings about deference to the agencies that was just overturned is a huge win for the industry because it forces NOAA not to be able to move forward with their own interpretation. Congress or the courts, we're going to have a lot of tools to push it back, but we're going to have to do that either in court or through legislation. The other pieces that are coming forward on this is that this is now at its last stages in the White House. If it moves forward and gets approved, it becomes law of the land and we have to file suit. They have flagged, because this is so politically toxic up and down the entire coast, and we've done a massive public relations campaign to make sure that and legislative campaign to create a lot of angst by the administration. They don't want to touch this right now. And they've delayed it and delayed it and delayed it and delayed it because they're scared of putting this out. They've put it out to they pushed it out to November, which is past the election. And so we expect right now that you'll see something come out of NOAA. We don't know what the changes are on the rule. We don't have line of sight into that. But you can expect something to happen in November, and NMA is prepared to file an injunction to stop it. And then we go into a whole new phase of this battle. But make no mistake, we're going to see more attempts in the Gulf. We're going to see more attempts by environmental groups to force this sort of movement in the Pacific. Last thing, nobody wants to see whales injured. And every recreational boater does everything they can to avoid hitting anything because they don't want to damage their boat and or damage their anyone who's on the boat. The vast majority of strikes are coming from massive ocean-going ships. That's the cause of this, which is why they've picked the 10-knot speed rule. A big, massive tanker can go 10 knots in rough seas, up to near gale force winds, which is what this rule would require boaters to do. A near gale force wind in a 35-foot open-hull boat is a massively dangerous situation for the people in that boat. So we've got a consumer safety issue. We've got the arguments. We've got the legal arguments. NOAA is in a big overreach. We know we can stop this. It's just going to continue to take us to be very vocal, use our power in the $1.1 trillion outdoor recreation economy and the $230 billion impact that we have each and every year. And if you want to learn more about this, go to boatingunited.org. That's where we're doing all of the activations, and you can connect directly to your members of Congress, your senators, your governors, but we cannot stop being loud about this because there's waves of this coming behind it and of these types of regulations, particularly if the Biden administration wins. You'll see more of this type of regulation come out. Because of how friendly they are with the environmental community. On the other regulation that we've been concerned about at NMMA, and we've worked internationally with ICOMIA and others to measure and prepare a best practice research report on what is the technology of the future. And I know Jan is going to give you a little bit on what Volvo Penta is looking at in this area. But we did a consummate study where we took 5 different power systems, gasoline and diesel, drop-in sustainable fuels, hydroelectric, battery electric, hydrogen, H2O, hybrid. We looked at a variety of different systems with 9 different boat types and found out which type would be best in each of that. And what the findings showed is that there's no one-size-fits-all for the marine industry. What it also showed is that with our 12 million fleet in the United States and a 30 million fleet worldwide, the fastest way for us to reduce the carbon footprint of the industry is through sustainable fuels. That would take a 30% reduction across the entire fleet instantly. Nothing would have even close to a bigger impact. So this is going to help us. We've now shared this with governments worldwide, including here in the US, to make sure that we don't have governments trying to regulate us into a single technology like electric, like they're trying to do in the auto, because that's not going to be a solution for the marine industry. It may be in some categories, but we've actually found in this report that out of the 9 boat types, if you shift it into electric, in 4 of them, you actually increase the carbon footprint. Why is that? Because the majority of boats, where are they being used right now? They're sitting at a dock somewhere. They're not like an auto where they're constantly running. And our use level is so low that the build is where the majority of your footprint is. And the build for actually EVs is incredibly high. So if you only get to zero emissions if you ignore the build part. So we're telling a very complex story, but this report allows us to get ahead, again, going back to the proactive advocacy that we're doing, to tell the story on behalf of the industry, do it worldwide, and make sure that we're heading in the right direction. Last thing I'll say is methanol and some other technologies are going to be in the super yacht category. So we're looking at working with the yacht, larger yacht manufacturers, as well as the super yacht, to do this same study for the larger boats. This is really a 26 foot and down analysis, but it does have legs into the larger yachts, which are going to go more hybrid, and Jana knows more about this than I do. Last thing, I want to talk a little bit about why I'm bullish for the future. We have not captured our full market potential. We might be slowing right now, but we're only selling to a portion of the market in the recreational boating industry. And how do I know that? We went into the pandemic with a 16% diversity share. 16% diversity in a 40% diverse country. We came out of the pandemic with a 16% diversity share in a 40% diverse country. We are really good at selling to the people that we've always sold to. Really good. And we should never forget that. It's a core part of the market going forward, and it's going to be how we build. But the key going forward is for the industry to make that shift to where they're looking at the lawyers and the doctors and the different community groups that are different from us and different from the faces in this room that are going to capture this next market. The luxury auto is doing this really well. Luxury auto is their biggest, fastest selling in certain product categories is not the faces in this room. It's in the diverse markets. And they're selling them 2 or 3 cars. So we know right now that there's a huge market in there. We just have not made the pivot in terms of marketing in that way that we need to in the way the auto dealers did. And I think it's really important for the yacht brokers to maybe spend some more time around this. You happen to be down here in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, one of the more diverse markets. You got a lot of athletes. You got a lot of musicians. You've got a big market here that's fairly diverse. But overall in the marine industry, we're not good at this yet, and we need to admit it. And that we're leaving money on the table. We're leaving market share on the table. And the way the auto dealers did it is they switched so that they had people who were able to speak and understand and talk to those segments, whether it was Latino, African American, LGBTQ, whatever it is, they target that very specifically, and they have people who can speak to that market comfortably. We haven't made that shift yet. And there's a lot of dollars there. And so that's why I'm bullish, because I know we can double our market just by going in that direction. And Discover Boating is starting to now do target marketing around that and trying to bring a lot of those consumer segments into the boat shows so that we can begin to have those conversations and invite them. I'm going to stop there and just, again, thank you for the partnership. Thank you for the time. I can leave it open for questions because I touched on a bunch of topics. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. Yeah, my pleasure.